First contact and desperate plea. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the signal patterns dancing across her quantum array display, her heart pounding against her ribs. After 15 years at the SETI facility in Chile's Atacama Desert, she learned to recognize every type of celestial noise. Pulsars, quasars, magnetars, even the occasional satellite interference. But this was different. This signal had structure, precision, intent. "James, come look at this," she called to her colleague, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might make the signal disappear. Dr. James Rodriguez hurried over, his coffee forgotten on his desk. His eyes widened as he watched the perfectly spaced pulses scroll across the screen. "It's coming from Vega," Sarah said, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. "And it's not just random pulses. There's a mathematical sequence embedded in the signal. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and—" She paused, her breath catching. "What looks like atomic numbers." Within hours, the facility was swarming with scientists and government officials. The signal wasn't just a message, it was a plea for help. As Earth's most powerful quantum computers worked to decode the transmission, a story emerged that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The Meridians, as they called themselves, were a spacefaring civilization that had achieved remarkable technological advancement through peaceful cooperation. Their bodies, evolved under the gentle gravity of their homeworld, were graceful and delicate. Their minds were brilliant, but they had never needed to develop the capacity for violence. Until now. The message contained detailed star charts, technical specifications, and desperate warnings about the Carthel Empire, a species that had evolved on a world almost as harsh as Earth, but had developed a rigid, hierarchical society based on conquest. The Carthel were systematically absorbing every civilization they encountered, not through negotiation or cooperation, but through overwhelming force. "They cannot comprehend resistance," the message explained. "Their neural architecture is fundamentally different from ours. They understand only dominance and submission. We have tried to reason with them, to share resources, to find compromise. They see our attempts at peace as weakness, and our unwillingness to fight as proof of their superiority." In the United Nations Security Council chamber, representatives from Earth's nations watched in stunned silence as holographic projections showed Meridian worlds falling one by one to the Carthel war fleets. The alien ships were massive, geometric constructions of dark metal and energy fields, designed to overwhelm through sheer intimidation. Admiral Helena Santos, recently appointed as Earth's first Space Force commander, stood before the council, her dark eyes intense. "The Meridians have technology far beyond ours in many areas: energy manipulation, faster than light travel, matter synthesis. But they've never had to use it for warfare. They don't understand combat tactics, strategic thinking, or the kind of rapid adaptation that humans have had to master just to survive on our world." She gestured to the technical specifications the Meridians had shared. "Their ships are beautiful, efficient, and completely vulnerable to the kind of asymmetric warfare humanity has been perfecting for millennia. The Carthel have never faced an enemy that thinks like we do. They've never needed to develop countermeasures against guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, or the kind of innovative thinking that Earth's militaries have had to master." The Chinese representative leaned forward. "You're suggesting we intervene in an alien war, risk human lives for another species?" "I'm suggesting," Santos replied, "that we have an opportunity to prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to protect those who can't fight for themselves. The Meridians have offered to share their technology with us. Combined with human tactical thinking and our natural adaptability, we could not only save their civilization, but establish humanity as a force for justice in the galaxy." The debate raged for days, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. Earth would answer the Meridians' call for help, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because humanity had spent its entire history preparing for exactly this kind of challenge. As the first human ships were retrofitted with Meridian technology, Dr. Chen worked alongside alien scientists to improve their communication systems. She couldn't help but notice how they marveled at humans' ability to function under Earth's crushing gravity, our capacity to handle extreme stress, and our instinctive understanding of combat dynamics. Your species evolved on a world that should have killed you, one Meridian scientist observed, its crystalline form shimmering with colors that indicated awe. Instead, it made you stronger. We never understood why the universe would produce worlds like yours. Now we know. You exist to protect those who evolved in gentler environments. As the first joint human Meridian fleet prepared to launch, Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of the ESS Humanity's Hope, watching Earth shrink in the viewscreen. The Carthel Empire had never faced a species that had clawed its way to intelligence through million years of predators, natural disasters, and warfare. They had never encountered a species that saw combat as a problem to be solved, rather than a display of dominance. They were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why that made humanity not just powerful, but necessary in a galaxy that needed protectors more than it needed conquerors, warriors from a harsh world. The training facility in the Nevada desert echoed with activity as human soldiers and Meridian technicians worked to integrate their capabilities. Captain Maya Patel watched as her Marine squad demonstrated basic combat maneuvers, their movements drawing gasps from their alien allies. What seemed routine to the humans appeared impossible to the Meridians. Your bodies, the Meridian engineer named Surface of Stillwater observed, its crystalline form pulsing with bands of amazed purple. They just keep going. The gravity here would crush our forms, yet you move as if it's nothing. Maya smiled, remembering her first meeting with the Meridians. Their crystalline bodies channeled light in beautiful patterns, but they required constant gravitational field adjustments just to maintain their form in Earth's gravity. We evolved to handle much worse than this, she explained, helping a Marine adjust his newly modified exoframe. What you see as harsh conditions, we see as normal. In orbit, the transformation of Earth's defensive fleet was underway. Meridian faster-than-light drives and energy manipulation systems were being integrated with human military vessels. But it wasn't just the technology that was being merged. It was two completely different approaches to space travel. Admiral Santos stood in the command center of the orbital shipyard, reviewing holographic displays of the modifications. The Meridian ships are marvels of efficiency, she explained to her staff, but they're designed with only peaceful applications in mind. We need to help them think differently. The first test of the combined technologies came sooner than expected. A Carthel scout vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit. It was a perfect opportunity to evaluate their enemy's capabilities and their weaknesses. The ES Adventure, a modified destroyer under the command of Captain David Chen, moved to intercept. The Carthel ship was larger, its dark hull bristling with weapon emplacements. But as the human crew watched their opponents' movements, they began to see patterns that revealed volumes about their adversaries. They're running standard patrol algorithms, Lieutenant Sarah O'Connor reported from Tactical. Their course corrections are precise, mathematical, and completely predictable. They're not adapting to our presence at all. Chen smiled grimly. They've never needed to adapt. Every species they've encountered either surrendered immediately or fought according to the same rigid patterns the Carthel use. Time to show them something new. The Venture's new Meridian-enhanced engines allowed it to perform maneuvers that would have torn a conventional ship apart. The human crew, already adapted to high conditions, handled the strain easily. The Carthel ship's responses were textbook perfect, and utterly inadequate against an opponent that didn't follow their rules of engagement. When the short battle ended, the Carthel vessel was disabled but intact, providing a wealth of tactical data. More importantly, it proved that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was unpredictability. Back on Earth, the captured Carthel ship yielded crucial insights. The alien vessel's environmental systems revealed that its crew required conditions similar to Earth's, slightly lower gravity and oxygen levels, but well within human tolerances. It was their psychology that proved more alien than their biology. Dr. Chen, working with a team of xenopsychologists, analyzed the ship's command protocols. Their entire society is based on absolute hierarchy, she reported to the UN Security Council. Every decision, every action, must be validated by the command structure. They literally cannot conceive of individual initiative or improvisation. This revelation sparked a fundamental shift in Earth's strategic planning. The Carthal's rigid thinking wasn't just a cultural trait. It was a vulnerability that humanity could exploit. While the aliens relied on overwhelming force and strict protocols, human forces would leverage chaos, unpredictability, and individual initiative. In the Meridian refugee camps scattered across Earth's safer regions, the contrast between the species became even clearer. The crystalline aliens watched in fascination as humans casually adapted to changing conditions, solved problems with creative solutions, and maintained their effectiveness even when plans fell apart. Your species, surface of still water, commented to Maya during a training session. You don't just survive chaos, you thrive in it. The Carathal seek to impose order through force. But you dance with disorder and make it work for you. The truth of those words was demonstrated daily as the joint fleet prepared for its first major operation. Human crews instinctively modified Meridian protocols, finding ways to use peaceful technology for defensive purposes. Where Meridian ships once housed scientific instruments, they now contained electronic warfare suites. Their energy distribution systems, designed for planetary terraforming, were repurposed into weapons that could disable rather than destroy. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of humanity's hope, watching the combined fleet perform maneuvers that would have been impossible just months ago. The ships moved with both Meridian grace and human unpredictability, their crews learning to complement each other's strengths. The Carathal believe they're invincible because they've never faced true resistance, she told her crew during the final briefing. They think their rigid hierarchy makes them strong. But humanity's greatest victories have always come from our ability to adapt, to think independently, to find solutions where others see only obstacles. As the fleet prepared for its first major engagement, the Meridians watched their human allies with growing hope. They had asked for help from the inhabitants of a death world, expecting warriors. What they got instead were protectors who had learned to transform the very harshness of their evolution into a force for justice. The Carthal Empire was about to learn that true strength doesn't come from imposing order. It comes from mastering chaos, and in that arena, humanity was unmatched in the known galaxy. The art of adaptation. The Carthal invasion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel above the Meridian colony world of Haven, their massive ships casting shadows over the crystalline cities below. It was a familiar scenario, one that had played out dozens of times before. The Carthal expected their usual swift victory over the peaceful Meridians. Instead, they found the combined human Meridian fleet waiting for them. Battle stations, Admiral Santos ordered from the bridge of humanity's hope. Execute Operation Chaos. The name wasn't just for show. It represented humanity's fundamental approach to warfare against the rigid Carthal hierarchy. The human ships broke formation in ways that appeared random to their enemies, but followed complex patterns developed through centuries of naval warfare on Earth. Each captain had broad strategic objectives, but complete tactical freedom in achieving them, a concept the Carthal command structure simply couldn't process. Captain Maya Patel, now commanding the swift attack vessel Thunderchild, led the first strike. Her ship, originally a Meridian scientific vessel, had been transformed by human ingenuity. Where it once carried atmospheric sampling equipment, it now housed electronic warfare systems that could hijack and redirect the Carthal's own command signals. They're trying to coordinate their response, her tactical officer reported, but their command protocols require validation from their flagship for any deviation from standard tactics. That's a 7-second delay we can exploit. 7 seconds was an eternity in combat. By the time the Carthel ships received authorization to adjust their formation, Thunderchild and her squadron had already struck from 3 different vectors, their modified meridian energy beams disrupting the enemy's shields in ways their rigid protocols had never anticipated. The real brilliance of the human strategy became apparent as the battle progressed. The Carthel's greatest strength, their absolute unity and coordination, became their greatest weakness. When human ECM systems began inserting false commands into their communication networks, their entire command structure began to unravel. Remarkable. Surface of Stillwater observed from his station on Humanity's Hope, where he coordinated with other Meridian technical advisors. Your species doesn't just adapt to chaos. You weaponize it. You turn the very concept of order against those who worship it. Admiral Santos watched as the battle unfolded according to no plan but achieved exactly the objectives she'd set. Human captains made split-second decisions, coordinating through intuition and experience rather than rigid protocols. Meridian technology, repurposed by human creativity, allowed their ships to perform maneuvers that the Carthel targeting systems couldn't even track, let alone counter. Dr. Chen, monitoring the battle from Earth through quantum entanglement communications, saw patterns emerging that validated their strategic approach. The Carthel ships are trying to maintain their hierarchical formation even as it's falling apart, she reported to the UN Security Council. They literally cannot conceive of fighting any other way. The turning point came when Captain Chen's ESS venture executed what would become known as the Ghost Ship Gambit. Using modified Meridian phase shift technology, his ship appeared to break apart under Carthel fire. The enemy ships, following their protocols perfectly, shifted formation to engage new targets, only to have the venture reappear intact behind their lines, disrupting their carefully maintained formation. The chaos cascaded through the Carthel fleet. Ships, unable to receive clear orders through the disrupted command network, fell back on their basic programming. But those fundamental protocols, designed for fighting conventional battles against predictable opponents, were worse than useless against an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern. "They're retreating," Maya reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement as the massive Carthel ships began to withdraw. "Their whole command structure is in disarray." But humanity's greatest victory wasn't in the ships they'd destroyed or disabled. It was in the message they'd sent. The Carthel Empire had built its reputation on being invincible, unstoppable. Now, for the first time, they'd been defeated not just by superior technology or numbers, but by an approach to warfare they couldn't even comprehend. In the aftermath, as human and Meridian ships began the work of securing Haven, Admiral Santos received a priority transmission from Earth. The quantum computers had finished analyzing the Carthel communication patterns captured during the battle. What they revealed would change the entire strategy of the war. Their entire empire, Dr. Chen explained in the briefing, is built on the assumption of their tactical superiority. They don't just believe they're unbeatable. They're psychologically incapable of processing defeat. This victory won't just hurt their military capabilities. It will shake the very foundations of their society. Surface of Stillwater's crystalline form, pulsed with colors that the human crews had learned to recognize as hope. "When we asked Earth for help," he said, "we expected warriors. Instead, we found something far more powerful, a species that turns adaptability itself into an art form." As the fleet regrouped and prepared to defend against the inevitable counterattack, Admiral Santos reflected on the battle's implications. Humanity had proven that their harsh evolution on Earth hadn't just made them strong. It had made them innovative, unpredictable, and capable of turning apparent weakness into strength. The Carthel would return, of course, but they would return to face an enemy that had already changed, already adapted, already developed new strategies. They would face humanity, the species that had turned survival itself into an art form, breaking the unbreakable. The Carthel High Command had never experienced anything like this before. Their massive command center, carved from a single asteroid in their home system, buzzed with unprecedented activity. Display screens showed something that had never happened in their history: simultaneous defeats across multiple sectors. On Earth, Dr. Chen studied the intercepted Carful communications with growing excitement. "Their language is changing," she reported to the Joint Human-Meridian Strategic Command. "They're having to create new words just to describe what's happening to them. Their rigid hierarchy is literally breaking down because they don't have the linguistic framework to process multiple failures." Admiral Santos leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Can we exploit this?" It wasn't just a military question. It was about understanding how to break an enemy's will to fight. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Maya Patel had been working with surface of still water to analyze Carful neural patterns from captured crew members. "Their minds are like their ships," she explained, "perfectly ordered, hierarchical, and completely vulnerable to chaos." The next phase of the war wasn't fought with energy beams or kinetic weapons. It was fought with uncertainty, unpredictability, and the systematic dismantling of everything the Carful believed about warfare. The ESS Thunderchild led a series of hit-and-run attacks that defied all logical patterns. They would strike heavily defended targets only to ignore seemingly vulnerable ones. Human ships would appear to retreat in disorder, drawing Carful pursuit ships into carefully planned ambushes that exploited their enemies' inability to deviate from established pursuit protocols. "They're trying to adapt," Surface of Stillwater observed, his crystalline form shimmering with fascination as they watched another Carful fleet fall into disarray. "But their very attempt to create new protocols to counter our tactics just makes them more predictable. They're trying to systematize chaos. It's like trying to capture ocean waves in a box." The psychological impact on the Carful Empire was devastating. Their entire society was built on absolute certainty. Certainty of victory, certainty of superiority, certainty of purpose. Now they faced an enemy that turned certainty itself into a weakness. Captain Chen's ESS venture led a particularly brilliant operation that came to be known as the Mirror Maze Strategy. Using modified Meridian holographic technology, his ship created phantom images of human vessels that behaved in completely random patterns. The Carful ships, programmed to respond to every threat, found themselves firing at ghosts, while real human ships struck from unexpected angles. But it was Dr. Chen's breakthrough in understanding Carful psychology that proved most decisive. "Their hierarchy isn't just organizational," she explained during a critical strategy session. "It's existential. They literally cannot conceive of existence without order. So let's show them ordered chaos." The resulting operation was codenamed Kaleidoscope. Human ships began executing maneuvers that appeared random but actually followed complex mathematical patterns. Patterns just regular enough for the Carful to detect, but too complex for them to predict or counter. The effect was catastrophic for Carful morale. Their commanders could see the patterns, could sense the underlying order, but could not comprehend or counter it. It violated everything they believed about how warfare, how reality itself, should work. Admiral Santos watched from the bridge of humanity's hope as another Carful fleet retreated in disarray. "They're not just losing battles," she observed. "They're losing their understanding of how the universe works." The impact rippled through the Carful Empire. Subordinate commanders, faced with situations their protocols couldn't handle, began making unprecedented requests for guidance. The delay in responses grew from seconds to minutes to hours as their command structure struggled to process scenarios it was never designed to handle. Then came the first defection. A Carful patrol fleet, rather than engage in another futile battle against unpredictable human tactics, surrendered to Captain Maya's task force. Their commander's explanation sent shockwaves through both sides. "We must understand this chaos that defeats our order." Surface of Stillwater's analysis of the defectors revealed something extraordinary. "Their neural patterns are changing," he reported. "Exposure to human unpredictability is actually altering their thought processes. They're evolving." The war had become more than a conflict between species. It was a clash between fundamentally different ways of thinking. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their strength or even their adaptability. It was their ability to understand and manipulate the very concept of order itself. Dr. Chen's final report to the UN Security Council summed it up perfectly. We're not just defeating the Carthel Empire. We're teaching them something their evolution never did. That true strength lies not in imposing order, but in dancing with chaos. As the combined fleet prepared for what they hoped would be the final phase of the war, Admiral Santos reflected on how far they'd come. They had proven that humanity's harsh evolution hadn't just made them strong, it had made them wise. They understood something fundamental about the universe that the Carthel had never learned. That order and chaos weren't opposites, but partners in an eternal dance. The Carthel Empire was breaking, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. They had thought themselves unbreakable because they had never faced an enemy that could make them question their most basic assumptions about reality. Now they faced humanity, the species that had turned questioning assumptions into an art form. Legacy of the Dithworlders. The final confrontation didn't take place on a battlefield. Instead, it happened in a vast chamber aboard humanity's Hope, where Admiral Santos faced the supreme commander of the Carthel Empire across a conference table. The journey to this moment had transformed both species in ways nobody could have predicted. "Your chaos," the supreme commander spoke through the translation system, his rigid posture betraying his discomfort. "It follows patterns we cannot comprehend. You turn disorder into strength. This defies all natural law." Dr. Chen, standing beside Santos, smiled gently. "That's exactly how our species survived Earth. Natural law tried to kill us countless times. We learned to bend it instead of breaking against it." The Carthel leadership had requested this meeting after their last major fleet suffered a devastating defeat. But it wasn't the military losses that had finally broken their resolve. It was the growing realization that their entire understanding of the universe was fundamentally flawed. Surface of Still Water, now Earth's official ambassador to both species, watched the proceedings with his characteristic shimmer of analytical interest. The changes in Carthel society over the past months had been fascinating. Their rigid hierarchy had begun to show signs of flexibility, sparked by their exposure to human unpredictability. "Your species," the Supreme Commander continued, his formal language struggling to express new concepts. "You evolved on a world that should have destroyed you. Instead, it taught you to embrace uncertainty. We never understood the purpose of death worlds until now." Admiral Santos leaned forward. "They exist to teach adaptability. Earth didn't just make us strong, it made us understanding. We learned that true power isn't about dominating chaos or imposing order. It's about finding balance between the two." The peace terms they negotiated that day would reshape the galaxy. The Carthel Empire would transition from a conquering force to a partner in a new interstellar alliance. Their strength would be tempered by human adaptability and meridian wisdom, creating something entirely new. Captain Maya Patel, commanding the honor guard for the ceremony, watched as former enemies signed the accords that would end the war. Her ship, Thunderchild, had become a symbol of how humanity had transformed conflict itself, not through overwhelming force, but through innovative thinking and the ability to see beyond traditional boundaries. The changes were already rippling through all three civilizations. Meridian scientists were learning to apply their peaceful technology in more dynamic ways, inspired by human creativity. Carthel commanders were beginning to appreciate the value of individual initiative, their rigid protocols gradually giving way to more flexible approaches. Dr. Chen's research team had made another fascinating discovery. "The Carthel neural architecture is actually changing," she reported during the final briefing. "Exposure to human unpredictability has triggered an evolutionary response. They're developing new neural pathways, literally learning to think in new ways." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just won a war. They had catalyzed the evolution of an entire species. The Carthel were learning that strength could come from flexibility as much as from rigid order. Your species, surface of still water, observed to Admiral Santos as they watched the combined fleet begin its peaceful patrol of former conflict zones. You've become something none of us expected. Not conquerors, not mere warriors, but teachers. You show us new ways to view the universe. The impact of Earth's emergence onto the galactic stage went far beyond military matters. Other civilizations, hearing of how humans had transformed the seemingly invincible Carful Empire without destroying it, began reaching out for diplomatic contact. They discovered that humanity's harsh evolution had given them more than just physical resilience. It had taught them empathy, the ability to understand and adapt to different perspectives. Each challenge overcome on Earth had added another layer to their ability to comprehend and work with the unknown. Captain Chen, now leading diplomatic missions to newly contacted species, found himself explaining Earth's history to fascinated alien audiences. Our world tried to kill us countless times, he would tell them. Each time, we had a choice: adapt or die. We chose to adapt, and each adaptation made us more capable of understanding others who had faced different challenges. The legacy of Earth as a death world was being rewritten. What had once been seen as a harsh cradle of warrior species was now understood as a crucible of innovation, adaptability, and understanding. The very hardships that had forged humanity's resilience had also given them the tools to become the galaxy's bridge builders. Admiral Santos stood on the observation deck of humanity's hope, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. The planet that had shaped them through millions of years of evolution now seemed both more precious and more meaningful than ever. We thought Earth was trying to kill us, she mused, a surface of still water. But it was preparing us for this, teaching us how to help other species face their own challenges. The meridian's crystalline form pulsed with colors of deep understanding. Perhaps that is the true purpose of death worlds, he suggested, not to create warriors, but to forge species that understand both strength and wisdom, both chaos and order, to create teachers for the galaxy. As humanity stepped fully onto the galactic stage, they carried with them not just the strength earned from their harsh evolution, but the wisdom gained from learning to dance with chaos. They had become not just survivors of a death world, but protectors of life in all its forms, teachers of adaptation, and living proof that the harshest crucible could forge the most understanding heart. The legacy of the Deathworlders would not be written in conquest or domination, but in the transformation of the galaxy into a place where strength and wisdom, chaos and order, could coexist in dynamic balance. Earth's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't its warriors, it was its teachers.